They gave us the songs that played at our weddings, the ballads that got us through breakups, the grooves that filled every family cookout for 50 years. But behind some of the most beautiful voices in music history were homes filled with fear. Tonight, we're not talking about the hits. We're talking about what happened after the camera stopped rolling, when the stage lights went dark, and the person you idolized became someone their own family barely recognized. Hey! Very special girl. Some of these stories ended in courtrooms. Some ended in silence that lasted decades. One of them changed how America talks about domestic abuse forever. Stay with us to the end, because the story at number one is the one that started it all. She's a silver freak, she's silver freaky. If you're new here, welcome to Hidden R&B Groove, where we dig past the liner notes and into the real stories behind the music that raised us. These stories matter because for decades, the industry protected these men. Labels looked away. Reporters looked away. Sometimes even fans looked away. It's only now, through memoirs, court transcripts, and the people who lived it finally speaking, that we're getting the full picture. Before we count down, hit that subscribe button. We release deep dive R&B documentaries every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Let's begin the countdown. Number 10, Solomon Burke. And nobody. Solomon Burke was one of the founding fathers of soul music, a preacher's grandson turned king of rock and soul, the man Atlantic Records built its early soul sound around. His rise was staggering. By his 20s, he was touring constantly, recording hit after hit, and building an empire that would eventually include a funeral home business, a ministry, and a family of over 20 children by multiple women. Someone should call. Oh, tonight. His biggest hits, like Cry to Me and Everybody Needs Somebody to Love, became soul standards, later covered by everyone from the Rolling Stones to countless films. But that same relentless touring and expanding family life came at a cost. Oh, don't you feel like crying? Don't you feel like crying? Here I am, honey. Come on, cry to me. You're all alone, honey. Burke was rarely present for his children's upbringing. Many grew up barely knowing their father, raised instead by mothers managing alone. When Burke passed away in 2010, the fractures became public. Reports of disputes among his children over his estate, his legacy, and even his final arrangements played out in the press. His musical legacy is untouchable, but for many of his children, the man on the record sleeves was a stranger. That absence, the price of ambition paid by the people closest to home, is a theme you're going to see again. And it gets darker from here. In your lonely room, and there's nothing, and there's no one. Oh, don't you feel like crying? Don't you feel like crying? Number 9, Frankie Lymon. Why do fools fall in love? Frankie Lymon was barely a teenager when Why Do Fools Fall in Love made him one of the first true child stars of rock and roll. His voice was electric. His rise was meteoric. A black teenager fronting a hit group, mobbed by fans, touring the world before he could legally drive. But fame that fast, that young, left no foundation underneath it. Why do they fall in love? By his 20s, Lymon was struggling with heroin addiction, broke despite his massive early success, and drifting between relationships that were never legally settled. When he died in 1968 at just 25, the chaos of his personal life exploded into public view. 3 different women came forward, each claiming to be his legal widow. The resulting court battle over his estate and songwriting royalties dragged on for years, revealing a tangled web of unresolved marriages and children left without clear answers about their father's legacy. Why does my heart, it will reach deep, tell me why? It wasn't cruelty in the way we'll see later in this list. It was neglect born from addiction in an industry that handed a child fame with no safety net. The next name on this list, though, brings us into far more deliberate, far more painful territory. Why do they fall in love? Number 8, Etta James.
When I saw you talking, babe.
Etta James sang with a rawness that came from real pain, at last made her immortal. But her own words in her memoir, Rage to Survive, painted a much harder picture at home. James rose from a chaotic childhood into stardom by her late teens, delivering hits like Tell Mama and I'd Rather Go Blind with a voice that carried decades of hurt. That hurt didn't stay on stage. James was open about her decades-long heroin addiction, and she wrote candidly about how it damaged her relationship with her son, Donto James, during his childhood, periods of absence, instability, and a household shaped by her addiction rather than her fame. Later in life, James and her son became her closest collaborators and caretakers, and she spoke openly about trying to repair what addiction had broken. Her honesty about that damage is part of what made her memoir so powerful.
Something deep down in my soul said, "Go on and cry."
Etta's story is one of a woman who eventually turned around and faced what she'd done to her family. Not every artist on this list did the same.
At last, the skies above.
Number 7, Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye's voice defined an era of soul music, smooth, spiritual, aching with vulnerability. But his family life was anything but smooth. Gaye's rise through Motown made him one of the label's biggest stars, with hits like What's Going On and Let's Get It On, reshaping what soul music could say. Behind that success, though, was a marriage to Anna Gordy, sister of Motown founder Berry Gordy, that ended in a brutal, very public divorce. To pay off the divorce settlement, Gaye famously recorded an entire album, Here My Dear, using deeply personal, sometimes bitter details of the marriage's collapse as the subject matter, effectively airing the couple's private conflict for the world to hear. His relationship with his own father was even more devastating. Marvin Gaye Sr. and his son had a famously volatile relationship marked by years of tension. In 1984, that conflict ended in tragedy when Gaye's father fatally shot him during an argument at the family home. Marvin Gaye's story shows how family conflict in this industry didn't just stay behind closed doors. Sometimes it became the tragedy that ended everything. Number 6, A.L. Green.
I'm so in love with you.
Al Green's falsetto turned Let's Stay Together and Tired of Being Alone into some of the most romantic songs ever recorded. The irony of his personal life is hard to ignore.
Me say that since, oh baby, since we've been together, loving you forever.
Green's rise in the early 70s made him one of soul's defining voices, a reverend in waiting whose music radiated tenderness. But in 1974, that image cracked violently. Green's girlfriend at the time, Mary Woodson, assaulted him by pouring a pot of scalding hot grits on him while he was in the shower, leaving him with serious burns before taking her own life shortly after. The incident, widely reported at the time, revealed a relationship far more troubled than the public image suggested. Reports at the time described a volatile, painful dynamic between the two in the period leading up to the attack.
Oh, baby, loving you weather.
Green would go on to become an ordained minister, largely stepping back from secular music for years. Whether that turn was driven by faith, trauma, or both is something only he could answer. But the incident remains one of the most shocking domestic tragedies in soul music history.
It's what I want us to do.
Number 5, Bobby Brown.
I can't sleep at night. I toss and turn, listening all the time. Blows my mind. You would even talk to me because girl.
Bobby Brown was New Jack Swing's breakout star and later half of one of the most talked about marriages in music history to Whitney Houston.
That's not prerogative. Some ask the questions. Why?
His rise was fast. After leaving New Edition, Brown's solo hits like My Prerogative made him a star in his own right. But it was his marriage to Houston that placed his home life under a microscope. No artist could survive unscathed.
Don't get me wrong, I'm really not stupid. Nobody can tell me what to do.
Their marriage became infamous for public volatility, arrests, allegations of instability, and years of tabloid coverage documenting a relationship both partners later admitted was deeply troubled by drug use. Brown has spoken in interviews in his own memoir about the toll his behavior took on Whitney and on their daughter, Bobby Christina, acknowledging regret over his absence and instability during her upbringing. Bobby Christina's death in 2015, following in tragic parallel to her mother's death 3 years earlier, cast an even darker shadow backward over the family's turbulent history, one that both fans and Brown himself have had to reckon with.
And I so real. I really don't know the deal about my brother.
Number 4, Rick Jones.
She likes the boys in the band.
Rick James gave the 80s super freak and a persona built entirely on excess. That excess, it turned out, wasn't just an act. James's rise was explosive, a genre-blending funk star who dominated charts and helped to launch other acts, including the Mary Jane Girls and Tina Marie. But by the early 90s, his personal life became a criminal case. In 1991, James and his girlfriend at the time, Tanya Hijazi, were charged after a woman accused them of assault and forced imprisonment during a drug-fueled incident at his home. James was convicted and served time in prison. It wasn't an isolated allegation. Multiple women came forward during that period describing. James later spoke about his addiction to crack cocaine as central to that period of his life, acknowledging in interviews the damage his behavior caused to the people around him, family included. His funk legacy is undeniable.
Freak, super freak, she's super freaking out. Everybody sing.
But the criminal record from that era is just as real. And it's a sobering reminder that the party persona hid something far more dangerous.
She'll wait for me backstage with her girlfriend in a limousine.
Number 3, Chris Brown.
Let me talk to you, tell you how it is. Don't do. I got friends and you got friends. They hop out and you.
Chris Brown's rise felt like the natural next chapter of the R&B tradition, a young star seemingly built to inherit Michael Jackson's crown. Then came 2009. Brown's early hits, including Run It and Kiss Kiss, made him one of the genre's biggest young stars by his late teens. But the night before the 2009 Grammy Awards, Brown assaulted his then girlfriend, singer Rihanna. Police photos of her injuries were leaked publicly, and Brown was ultimately convicted of felony assault. The case became one of the most widely covered domestic violence incidents in modern music history, sparking a national conversation about abuse and celebrity relationships that continues to shape how the industry and public respond to such cases today. In the years since, Brown has faced additional legal allegations involving other partners, and more recently, custody and co-parenting disputes covered extensively in the press regarding his children.
Run it, girl, indeed I can run it. Come here, have you saying I can't be 16?
Unlike some names on this list, Brown's case unfolded in the social media era, meaning almost none of it stayed private. It became a permanent, unavoidable part of his public record.
Heard about me, but guess what's going down in Wheelie? They hop out and you hop in.
We're closing in on number 1 now. And the next 2 names on this list aren't just about personal scandal. They're about years of documented, repeated violence that their own families lived through in silence.
Let me see if you can run it. Girl, indeed I can run it. If he ain't, let me know. Let me see if you can.
Number 2, James Brown.
I feel good. I knew that I would not.
James Brown earned the title Godfather of Soul through raw talent and relentless work ethic. But multiple wives and children have described a home life defined by fear. Brown's rise from poverty in Georgia to global stardom is one of music's great success stories. Hits like Papa's Got a Brand New Bag and I Got You, I Feel Good made him one of the most influential performers of the 20th century.
I feel nice, like sugar and spice, so nice.
That same intensity, according to several of his ex-wives and children in interviews and legal filings over the decades, extended into violent behavior at home.
I can't do me no harm.
Brown was arrested multiple times over the years on domestic violence charges, including incidents involving his wife, Adrienne Brown, in the 1980s that were documented by police and widely reported at the time. After his death in 2006, his estate became the subject of a bitter, years-long legal battle among his children and other claimants, a fight over money and legacy that dragged on for over a decade, further exposing just how fractured his family had become by the time he died. James Brown changed music forever, but for the people who lived under his roof, that legacy came with a far heavier price. And now, the story you've been waiting for, the one case in R&B history that became the defining symbol of domestic abuse in the music industry.
Don't be ashamed, know you're shy.
Number 1, Ike Turner.
I left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day. But I never lost 1 minute of sleep.
Before Ike and Tina Turner became a proud Mary blasting sensation, Ike was already an accomplished musician and producer. Some historians even credit his 1951 recording, Rocket 88, as one of the first rock and roll songs ever made. Ike discovered a teenage anime bullock, renamed her Tina, and built one of the most electrifying live acts in music history around her. Hits like River Deep, Mountain High, and their explosive cover of Proud Mary made Ike and Tina Turner one of the biggest touring acts of the era.
Riverboat queen, holy wheel, and the Proud Mary keep on rolling, yeah.
But behind that success was years of documented physical and psychological abuse. Tina Turner detailed the abuse extensively in her 1986 memoir, I, Tina, describing repeated beatings, control, and fear that defined nearly 2 decades of their marriage and professional partnership. Ike himself, in later interviews before his death in 2007, admitted to hitting Tina, though he disputed the full extent of what she described. Tina finally left the marriage in 1976, reportedly fleeing with just 36 cents and a gas station credit card, and went on to rebuild her career into one of the greatest comeback stories in music history.
Rolling on a river,
Rolling low,
rolling
low.
Her story, turned into the 1993 film What's Love Got to Do with It, became one of the first times mainstream America confronted domestic abuse within a Black celebrity marriage, and it remains one of the most referenced cases in conversations about abuse in the music industry to this day.
Don't have to worry if you got no money. The people on the river are happy. The wheel keep on turning. Proud Mary keep on burning.
Ike Turner's musical contributions helped build the foundation of rock and roll. But his legacy will always be inseparable from the abuse Tina Turner survived and ultimately outlived him to tell the world about.
Rolling on a river.
10 legends, 10 families who paid a price the fans never saw. What strikes you looking back at this list isn't just the abuse itself. It's how long it stayed hidden, protected by fame, by silence, by an industry that too often looked the other way. Some of these men faced consequences. Others never did. And in almost every case, it was the survivors, the wives, the children, the sons and daughters left behind who eventually had to tell the truth themselves. These stories don't erase the music. At last, what's going on? Proud Mary? They're still part of the soundtrack of our lives, but knowing the full story means we get to hold both truths at once. The beauty of the art and the reality of the people who live closest to the artists. Which of these stories surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Hidden R and B Groove. We're uncovering the stories the music history books left out every single week.